After writing 2 transformational books myself and supporting many other beings to do the same, I've become enthralled by the deep and mysterious magic that's activated when we choose to say yes to ourselves and commit to the book writing journey. Of course, we want to inspire change and new perspectives in our readers, but the transformation that happens as an author, both throughout the writing process and by actually releasing your book into the world, is surprisingly potent. I know I've been blindsided in the most disruptive and delicious ways by some of the changes my books have brought into my life. Writing a book is like casting a spell. Although we can never be completely sure what's going to be unleashed during the process, we choose to do it anyway. This Unbound one is a heroic journey. Each book has the potential to be a magical portal, a doorway to a new world, both for you and your reader. Each book has a very specific medicine that it's here to share with us. And each book gives us the opportunity to alchemize the magnificent imperfection of our experience into gold. The truth is that anyone can write a book. We could all get a few thousand words down and put them together. But what fascinates me is what happens when we allow the book writing process to go deeper. When we say, fuck it, get naked and dive way down beneath the surface. Letting go of the shoulds and any need to be acceptable, sensible, or approved of. What fascinates me is what happens when we make ourselves fully available to being transformed by the very act of writing a book. This is Unbound Writing, and this is the process we'll be exploring together here in the Unbound Writers Club. I'm Nicola, author and founder of the Unbound Press, and I help magical beings to write the transformational book they're really here to write at this time. I'm your guide here in the Unbound Writers Club, and the aim of this podcast is to help you to feel supported, encouraged, activated as you embark on your book writing journey. Whether you're a first-time author or have many books out in the world, my hope is that you will find something here to inspire you. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Unbound Writers Club. Today I am joined by Unbound Press author Sarah Wheeler. Sarah's book, Shadow and Rose, a soulful guide for women recovering from rape and sexual violence, is out now. This is such a powerful book. In Shadow and Rose, Sarah shares her own recovery journey in a 10-week program, which is designed to really catalyze and empower women on their ongoing recovery journey. So I really wanted to have this conversation with Sarah. Shadow and Rose, the paperback version, has been out in the world for a couple of months now as we were recording this episode. And I wanted to talk to Sarah about, what her writing journey has been like. And she's also writing a second book for the Unbound Press as well. But also, what it's like, what comes up when we are thinking about putting these books out into the world, and how it is this ongoing journey. Like, it's not just about the writing process and the publishing process, but like what happens next. And that's a really important part of what Sarah and I talk about during this conversation. So I am going to zip it and let's dive in and hear what Sarah has to share with us. So Sarah, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome back to the Unbound Writers Club.
It is a welcome back, isn't it? I forgot about that.
I know. I almost did as well. It's like, no, you've been here before and you will be here again.
For sure.
And today we're here to talk about Shadow and Rose and your experience of writing the book. But before we dive into that, I want to ask you the question that I always ask at the beginning of these conversations. And I know I've asked you it before, but I'm wondering what it means to you right now to be an unbound writer.
Ooh, things definitely change. I'd forgotten you'd even asked me that question the first time round. What does it mean to be an unbound author? kind of like, where do you start? I think it showed me a lot of things and primed me for the quite unpredictable / predictable way that bringing a book out into the world, or the publishing world, kind of works. And I know just off the podcast a second ago, when we were just chatting, we were speaking about something to do with bringing the book out and what you think is going to go well, and then that doesn't go well, and you're like, oh, okay, back to the drawing board. So there's the kind of like priming for things being a bit off the wall and not really going the way that you would expect them to go. And that's a kind of practical thing about being an Unbound author. But it's a big fat permission slip that isn't even given by anybody else. It isn't given by you. It isn't given by the brand of Unbound. It's a permission slip that you end up like giving back to yourself to metaphorically write outside the lines of your notebook, to scribble all over into notes all over your computer as well, to write in post-it notes, to write on napkins in cafes, to keep a mental note, not too many because it will drive you nuts, to talking to your phone and record yourself, and know that writing isn't like a linear process. And it's not something that some people do, don't get me wrong. Some people do sit down and be like, right, for an hour or 2 hours, I'm going to work on my book, or I'm going to work on writing or write something. I think what was really important for me when I was in the Unbound Writers Mastermind itself was knowing that we were getting together to have our quote unquote writing time. But actually in the Unbound world, the writing time doesn't have to look like writing time. Like writing time can look like having a bath, or it can look like meditating. For me, when I was working on the first draft of the next book that I'm going to bring out, I was doing a lot of yoga nidra to help me write. Yoga nidra for sure features as one of the kind of tools in the lovely tool bag of Shadow and Rose. So I practiced that often, but I found that it was a really good kind of void, like this kind of mellow place to drop into. And then coming out of, magically I'd have at least something to write, or something had got like sparked off. So I think, yeah, it's just knowing that writing in an unbound way isn't something that you were taught in school. It isn't something that you were necessarily taught in uni or on a creative writing course. I mean, hell, I don't know, you might have been. I never did one of those, so correct me if I'm wrong. But it fits, I think, with being like in that kind of unpredictable way that it is to be a woman as well. Going with our cycles and what's important to us. And things have changed for me a lot since I first wrote Shadow and Rose, and it came out independently through me as an ebook. But it's those foundations of knowing that things are going to go quote unquote wrong, and you can always come back from them. And that's kind of Unbound, because we're very conditioned to try and make things go right and do it well and perfectly the first time. And it's like, oh, I made a mistake, let me hide that from everybody. It's like, oh no, I made a mistake, this is part of it. Or something didn't go the way I wanted it to go, this is part of a process. And it's like, when you relate to the mistakes as something which is kind of guiding you towards something else or something better, or just like a little kind of teachable moment for yourself, like it doesn't seem all consuming when it's like, this has gone to shit, what do I do now?
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And that's through the writing process, through the publishing process, once the book is out in the world, this whole process is unpredictable. And I love the way you described the Unbound way, or the way you experience it. And it's interesting thinking back to when we first connected, which I think was 2020?
It was in 2020.
You were in the process of writing Shadow and Rose at the time. And actually you came into the Unbound Writing Mastermind towards the end of 2020, and you signed with the Unbound Press to write and publish your second book, which you're in the process of doing enough. And it was only later that you were like, oh, it would be wonderful for Shadow and Rose to become part of the Unbound family as well. But
that's how it went down.
Yeah, it did. Just trying to get that straight in my head then.
No, I sometimes have to think about it as well, because again, that speaks to the Unbound process, doesn't it? Like I came in when I was doing one thing, finished up something, started working with the mastermind to be writing something else. And then it was like, oh, I need to come back to Shadow and Rose. and let this be out in the world and give it sort of time and space before going to the next thing. Because that was literally my personal process. Like Shadow and Rose came first.
Yeah.
And even though like chronologically, I started writing it after Shadow and Rose, I was finished writing that needed to come out first, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to hear a bit more about the writing process for Shadow and Rose and how that was for you.
It was, from the get-go, it was something that was really new to me, something that was kind of unpredictable because I don't have any formal training as a writer. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of people that come through Unbound, whether you you sign and you write a whole book or what have you, whether you just do like little bits of courses here and there. I think that's the beauty of it, is that it isn't an exclusive space in the sense that it's like, oh, you have to have this, that, and the other writing experience. And so I found it welcoming that I didn't have to be any kind of quote unquote expert in something. And if we look at it from a kind of woman's eye view of something, I think women have to work extra hard in the world to let their voices be heard and to let their ideas have, or to work to let their ideas get credence, because there are other people who often are men. Of course, we've got women experts about stuff, and we're very much experts in our own lives and in who we are and knowing how we want to live. But if you come out of the kind of the corporate world and around like personal development and marketing, which was what my background was before I came into yoga teaching, there was a lot of chat about basically just like making sure that you know everything there is to know about something before you start getting your ideas down. And I knew that I was going to be writing a book about my experiences of recovery from sexual violence and rape. And who's more of an expert in that than the survivor?
Exactly.
You know? And I think that was when I was first talking to one of the clinicians who was kind enough to write a little bit of material for the book. When we spoke about it on Zoom a couple of times, something that she kept coming back to was, you're not a quote unquote expert in the field. Like, you're not a trained medical person, you're not a counselor, but what you're giving is a real like survivor's eye view of being on the ground in your own recovery. And I think coming back to that during my writing process was a sort of affirmation for myself of A, yes, I have the right to be writing this book. B, I have the right to recover, and not just recover, but be a person who's no longer like just surviving what happened to them, but living their life and showing that you can thrive. That's not something you have to rush. You know, you don't want to bypass all the healing that comes with that, or before that, or the healing that comes ongoingly. But there is a potential to really take back a lot of not just the power that was taken away from yourself when you were subjected to and when you survived sexual violence, but looking back into your life and seeing where were these other small power grabs that society did to you, that your upbringing did to you, that education did to you, that the conversation that we have about women's bodies did to us. Where were these little power grabs, and how can we take that back for ourselves? And of course, you don't get to write all about that in Shadow and Rose. I've tried to keep it as on track as possible, because when we're recovering from trauma, it's like, I can't hold too many ideas in my head at the same time. That's for another time. That's when we can kind of look and see the bigger picture. But there are materials in there in Shadow and Rose that I put in, and other people have said to me since reading it, this is obviously about sexual trauma, but there's so much takeaways in here for people that are having other kinds of interpersonal trauma as well. And that was in the back of my mind in the writing process. It was like, if someone picked this book up and just read one page, what could they take from it if they wanted to,
Yeah, gorgeous. And I love the way you talked about power grabs there. That really, I think that's such a great way of describing what we experience throughout our lives, like all these little, not so little power grabs.
Definitely little moments of being undermined and not seen, or when we're very young, like not having our needs met, and then that trains us out of the power to meet our own needs when we're older, whether you're recovering from a shock trauma or not. We've all got bits of developmental trauma, whereas children, we weren't served and we weren't taken care of in the way that we should have been. not because all of our parents were abusive, because I think probably most of the time that wasn't the case. Like, people weren't going out of their way to be abusive, but parents only know so much, you know. They can only do what they can do, and they're coming into being parents with their own baggage, trauma, upsets, unhealed, what have you. And I think picking up a book which has got any kind of theme around like healing yourself of illness, disease, shock, trauma, abuse, it's kind of like marking a line in the sand for yourself about like, where does the power lie in my life, and how can I keep bringing that back to myself?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that makes me kind of think or wonder about, like, what made you decide to write Shadow and Rose? Because that feels like a huge decision and a huge way of taking your power back to actually
Yeah.
like do that, give yourself permission to write this book and share it.
Yeah, sure. I've been asked this a couple of times by different people, and there's a sort of like obvious answer and a not so obvious answer. And at the time, the obvious answer was like, this is definitely why I wrote it. This is exactly why. And that's the truth. And it still is, but there's something else about it now. And I think that kind of rational, obvious answer was, I wrote it, A, because I wanted to help other people. I wanted to make a kind of companion, you can call it a self-help book. People might like metaphorically stick their fingers in their mouth and do that gag sign when you hear about self-help. It's like, okay, that's not everybody's bag. So I'm trying to write it in quite a conversational tone, and to have it be accessible, whether you've read anything which is about healing or not. You know, that's irrelevant. I wanted to put a message out in the world that, even though it will look like, after you've had like a one-off experience, hopefully one-off, I mean, hopefully never, but hopefully if it was one-off of being raped, or a one-off experience of sexual assault, you can come back from that. But also speaking to the possibility that if you have had ongoing abuse throughout your life, whether that's been as a child in the form of sexual abuse, or whether that's been abuse within relationships, abuse in any way, shape, or form, there is a way back. There is a way back into yourself and back into your life, and a way back into parts of you that you might have not really looked at before, not been familiar with, that links us back to the power grabs that kind of make us a bit fearful of looking into those bits of ourselves that society kind of deems as being quite unpalatable. Fear, shame, guilt, rage, anger, jealousy, feeling murderous towards the people that attack you, you know, like that kind of thing. So it was a way to let other survivors know that whatever they're dealing with, and each survivor is different in how they decide that they want to tackle their feelings and how they want to heal from stuff. There will be ongoing themes, and I felt like I could speak to them with a on the ground, non-expert but expert voice, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's stuff to do with like resetting your boundaries, or even recognizing and learning what boundaries are to start with in your life. How rest can play a massive part in one's recovery. How we have this little insidious voice of shame that, whether you've experienced sexual violence or not, we all have that, and it really lives in the head and like deep down in the body. And how if we kind of if we can sort of give that like a little name, like a character for itself, and kind of anthropomorphize it a bit, it's like it takes the sting out of that horrible tail that shame has, and it likes to kind of whip us and lash us with onto our backs. And yeah, just like forging a path forward. And at the end of the book, you know, it wouldn't be a giveaway if I say this, I mentioned the F word, so the F word being forgiveness, and kind of unpacking a lot of our ideas around forgiveness, whether you come from like a religious background, or whether you have been told like, oh, you have to forgive because it's like a healthy thing to do, or you have to forgive because you're a bad person if you don't. You have to forgive for all the myriad reasons that society tells us that forgiveness is a good idea. Well, actually, yeah, most of those could be true, but it's not something that you need to rush. And when I was recovering, I felt like I kind of rushed myself towards forgiving the people that had attacked me, because it was the good, kind, compassionate, spiritual thing to do.
Yeah.
And it would be detrimental for my life if I didn't forgive these people. Now that argument does have credence. I do buy that, and I can see and I can experience how clinging on to the real like live rage about what happened, if you cling on to it that hard, it's going to have terrible detrimental physiological impact on your body. You know, stress is one of the major stressors in our lives. You know, stress has a massive impact on the human body, and it's not good ones. And for not forgiving is going to ramp up our stress levels. However, if we're being rushed to do something that doesn't feel authentic for ourselves, that's us again, like giving our power away.
Yeah.
And that's us kind of bowing to a line of doing what somebody else tells you to do because they think it's what's good for you. So I've been quite mindful while writing Shadow and Rose to always put the reader, the survivor, like always in the driver's seat. And everything that I've got is like, it's an idea, it's an invitation, it's a suggestion. You can like chuck the whole lot out and just take one sentence from the book, you know. So never having to like rush toward an end goal of recovery. You know, I think recovery is pretty goalless. It's endless. It's organic, actually. It's always like changing its face. One day you'll feel really great. Another day you'll be like, I can't be asked to get out of bed. And, you know, if you feel like that, that's up to you. Why should you take everything at your own pace, you know?
Yeah, beautiful. And you really do, you know, you do put the reader, the survivor, in the driving seat, as you've just described there. And as you're talking, Sarah, I'm thinking like this idea that you have to be an expert or a certain kind of expert, someone who's been like designated as you are an expert on this subject to write a book, and not just about kind of, you know, what you're writing about in Shadow and Rose and recovery from sexual violence, but anything. Like it's such a it's such a kind of patriarchal idea that you have to be a certain sort of person, reach a certain level, have a certain kind of flavor of knowledge in order to write a book or share anything around a particular subject. I mean, why wouldn't it be more than enough, or, you know, to have actually experienced that yourself? I mean, it just makes no sense for me.
Yeah. I mean, I would never want to be the person to take away the hard work and the hours that people who do to be designated experts, like the work that they do put in to things. I'd never want to like punch down and say that any of that is bad. And because, you know, we exist in a world which is full of like polarities and different ways of looking at stuff. You know, we could go to an extreme and be like, oh, nobody gets to say anything then if you can like prove your little certificate of authenticity, of your degree, of your course, of your this, that, and the other, that deems you able to speak. And I think, you know, it's interesting that I started writing Shadow and Rose in 2020 when we were in the midst of this ongoing bizarre situation that has been labeled as COVID-19, which shook up the world, you know, on a literally on a global scale. Every single country seemed to be marching to the same hymn sheet of what we were going to do about this particular thing. And everybody got shoved inside their homes, and loads of people were not able to go to work. And then the government started paying people to not go to work. So I'm sitting there thinking, well, I haven't got any yoga classes to teach. And I have been saying for a long time that one day I'm gonna write this damn book about recovery. And it was after a conversation with a friend who, again, is an expert in talking about domestic violence. And she's an advocate. She works with women who've been through domestic violence, and she has herself, and about just how important it is for us to put our voices out and put our heads above some sort of parapet about topics that we care about, because you just don't know the good impact that that's going to have on the people that the work reaches. And also, I couldn't have banked on the good impact that it was going to have on myself. You know, if we just backtrack a second and go back to the last question that you asked me about, like, why did I write, what had me write it? The obvious answer was, well, to help other people. But I didn't know, or massively underestimated, the impact that it would have on myself. So now, without being someone who's like obsessed by labels and experts and what have you, but like saying that one is an author, it's something that gives you a damn confidence boost. I can tell you, like, you've stuck it out through the thick and thin and the roundabouts and the upside downs to write your book, and you're like, I did that.
Yeah.
You know, I wrote about something that really mattered. And that's the beauty of people who write within Unbound, is that we're all writing about topics that absolutely come from the heart and the gut and the bowel and all the low down stuff that we're really taught to not look towards. Like there's some real like how can I say, like belly work of the writers, the low down like root and sacral chakra work of writers who work within Unbound. And, you know, not to blow my own trumpet, but I think Shadow and Rose goes within that category because it is so to do with what is deep down, primal and profound in all of us, is our sense of safety,
Yeah.
which is really taken away from us as a result of sexual violence. So yeah, like you don't have to be an expert to write anything. You know, you're an expert in being a human because you've made it so far in your life. You're an expert in knowing what you care about. And even if people are like, oh, I don't know, I want to write something, but there's so much I care about and I don't know what it is. And it's like, well, if you give yourself the space and the quiet time, that thing will make its voice heard. And then your inner expert is going to write about it and, you know, fuck the people who tell you that you can't because you can.
Exactly. And I just want to add there as well, like, I'm not saying, like, when you're writing a book about any subject, this is not about like anyone can just say, oh, well, look, this is the way it is. And it's not about being prescriptive, like, and you're certainly like, so not that in Shadow and Rose, literally, you know, sharing like this, these are some of the things that work for me. And, you know, you may like to try it, but, you know, whatever works for you. And you do that in such a beautiful way. And I just want to come back to what you were talking about there, you know, writing about something that is like so like deeply, I don't know if it's not personal, it's not the right word really, but not just for you as the author, but for each of the readers who connect with this book. Like it's something that many, or I'd say most women or beings go through on their own, like feel really, really alone on their journey of recovery. And I'm just thinking about that in relation, you know, we were speaking about this before we hit record, like getting the book out there and getting it into the hands of, you know, the people who need to read this, the women who need to read this book. And it comes with its own challenge because it is something that people may and are likely to be feeling a lot of shame around and not wanting to acknowledge, certainly not publicly. So kind of when you're sharing things on social media, it's not like everyone's going to be commenting and engaging.
Yeah. And it's, you know, just quickly on that point about social media, like I've been quite circumspect about what I have and haven't shared, particularly in the like vast town hall echo chamber madness that is Instagram, because it's saturated. And you know, I couldn't have handled looking at Instagram in 2016 2017 when I was kind of in that sort of opening stages of recovering. I couldn't have handled it for many different reasons, but just because it's so busy and things are so quick, and that kind of quickness, the mind is so busy when you're recovering from trauma that looking at things that speed up the mind even more and speed up your resources and have you kind of make like black and white binary decisions real quick, like or dislike, yes, no, what do I think about that? Oh, I don't know, because here's another image that's just come my way and now I'm like distracted by this. It's ungrounding. It is an ungrounded platform, and that can only do damage to people who are then relearning how to, like, when I was recovering, I felt like I couldn't get my feet on the ground. You know, there was a time when I was like, I literally can't get out of bed. Before that, couldn't get off the floor. Eventually, I got back up to standing. And then it was kind of like, oh, I'm here. I'm on my feet. I can't quite feel them. I just feel kind of all over the place. And trauma, you know, other experts will tell you, you do leave your body a little bit and then something kind of comes back in and you're back in kind of the land of the living, your own type of reality again. Forgotten where I was going with this. Oh yeah, social media. It's a quick place and I don't find it a particularly, it's not outwardly unfriendly. I haven't experienced that. It's not outwardly unfriendly to survivors, but it's not designed to be a place which is soothing, calming, forget karmic, that's not what I meant, different wrong word. It doesn't welcome the relaxation and healing response that one needs to foster within themselves when they're recovering.
Yeah, absolutely. So the challenge is, like, how do we get this book, Shadow and Rose, into the hands of the people who need it? And that's a conversation that we've been having. And I think we both wanted to say to anyone who is listening who has any idea or inspiration about how Shadow and Rose can be shared and can reach the women, the people who need to read it, then please do get in touch with me.
Exactly. I would be really, really honored to hear from people that feel like they have some kind of sway over bringing this book towards the people that need it the most. Whether that's just being like, oh, this book might help my sister.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I ask you a couple more questions about it before I buy it for her, or before I refer her to looking at the book? Or maybe it's people who work within women's organizations that are open to hearing from people that aren't quote unquote experts in the written book. That's some of the difficulty that I've bumped up against already with bringing Shadow and Rose out is like, I don't have a qualification in writing about trauma other than that I've been through it and I've lived with it and I ongoingly cope and work with it, having renegotiated and kind of putting trauma into places. So hang on, let me rephrase that. And renegotiated with trauma by learning ways that I don't have to be like overcome by it, because that's what rape does. Like it puts you into a whole tailspin that makes your life just seem overwhelming, let alone the recovery part of your life. That, or it just sends you numb and you can't even notice how you're feeling. So that's my expertise, and that's what I do want to give away to people. So finding pathways to actually have that happen would be amazing. I don't think really many first-time authors write a book to make money. I certainly didn't. I think writing a book isn't going to make you loads of money anyway, so forget that. However, I do want the book to get to the people that need it.
Exactly.
And so that might mean like word of mouth conversations. It might mean chatting on a podcast. It might mean linking up to organizations that are in a kind of this sort of field, and they feel like they would want to welcome opinions and input from people that have been through experiences that maybe their service users have as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, Sarah?
The best way is you can email me. So my email address is yourenoughyoga@gmail.com. I'm going to spell that out, and this is really long, so sit tight. I just want people to get it right. So yourenoughyoga@gmail.com. That's the best way that you can reach me. I'm good on emails. I'm quite slow on social media. Poke my head in from time to time. And also my website, my yoga website is www.yourenoughyoga.com.
Okay, we'll make sure that that's all in the show notes as well, so people can see that. And yeah, as we said, like really, really open to any ideas about how to get Shadow.
Yeah, just remembering what we said at the start about what it is to be an unbound author. I think it's these chats and these opportunities to kind of fling the metaphorical doors open and just go, hey, I need some support with this.
Yeah.
That's a really big part of it as well. It goes outside that adage of having to look like you've got everything handled all the time, having to look like everything's sorted and everything's going superbly well all the time, which the lovely world of social media can really trick us into. Like, I promise you, not everybody is as glamorous as their Instagram handle, So any opportunities that we can have to actually link up to people that can point us in the right direction so our books' messages get out there, that's always going to be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also really important to acknowledge that, like, when the book is released, like any book, that's not the end of the journey. Like, it's the end of the writing and the publishing journey, but that's the beginning of the journey of the book and like your author journey as well.
Yeah.
So
I've always felt like with Shadow and Rose particularly, it was like kind of working with not necessarily another person, but like another life force, like another being that I was working with, writing, channeling, however you want to say it. But it wasn't just me that was writing out words. There was something else that was coming through as well. And I think probably that's the case for a lot of other Unbound authors, is that we're bringing through our take on stuff, our interpretation. And, there's people who do literally channel channel different beings and so on, who write for Unbound, and they're a conduit. And I haven't channeled anything like that, but I have been a conduit for the message that I wanted to put out there, and will continue to be that, so that other people get to just pick up their stuff and get back on with life after being attacked.
Oh wow. Oh, Sarah, thank you so much. I've got my copy of Shadow and Rose here, and honestly, it just, like, just holding it in my hands, it does have, you mentioned this word earlier, like this really soothing quality. Like, I noticed it when I took it down off my bookshelf earlier, and I'm just so grateful to you for kind of listening to that inspiration to write it and birthing it into the world. And I'm so grateful that it's part of the Unbound Press family.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for being my partner.
And the journey continues.
And it continues, because it just always does. And it's not done until you say that it's done. People can choose to like stop engaging with writing, they can stop engaging with their book like whenever they want to, because we're all, like I said, we're all at the driver's seat of our life, even when it really feels and looks like that we're not. But this book thing, it's definitely got its own life.
Yeah, it definitely has.
I'm sure you can speak to that.
Yeah, I get. Wow.
That's why we're here, damn it.
If anyone listens to, if you've listened to this podcast, even if you just listened to one episode, you will have got a strong sense of what a journey it is. So. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate you, and thanks for being in the Unbound Writers Club today.
Yeah, and thanks for your time. Thanks for giving me the platform, opportunity, and just to be the kind of messy, unbound person who needs to write and let other people know that they're going to be okay, however long it takes.
Always. Thank you.
Thank you.